Okay, so what do you need besides a miracle?
Guns. Lots of guns.
No one has ever done anything like this.
That's why it's going to work.
What are you doing, Nomad? Making a tier list when everybody's already made their tier list. You're a little late. Well, shit. Sometimes you just gotta play the hand you were dealt. Alright, y'all. Today we are making a primary tier list for Helldivers 2. Now, we're going to be focusing on the bugs today because I want the discussion, I want the video just to be on the Terminids, so we're all on the same page, so there's no mixing and matching if it's, you know, the bots or the bugs I'm talking about. It's always going to be about the bugs in this video. Another thing to take note of is the fact that my playstyle ain't your playstyle, which means my weapons and what I like to use maybe not going to gel with you. And inherently, all tier lists are basically full shit and dog shit. So this is essentially my dog shit tier list. So if I have a weapon that you like that I don't like, don't take it personally, you use what is fun. And finally for this list, I'm going to be talking from the perspective of those upper tiers. So I'm saying tier 9, tier 10s. So if I say something like a brood commander, I'm talking about the alpha commander because there are no brood commanders once you get into the upper tiers. They're all alphas. Now for the bugs, we're going to mainly be focusing on the usual suspects. So we got the warriors, we got the guards, the hunters, stalkers, commanders, bile spewers, and shriekers. And we need to talk about how each of these weapons performs against them. Now with these weapons, I'm not going to judge, say, the light armor penetration weapons too harshly against the bugs because honestly, I would consider the bile spewer the only kind of issue that light armor penetration weapons run into. And that's just a luck of the draw when it comes to seeds and maps, you know, the enemy types you get. So it's more so how each of these weapons deal with that list of enemies that I had before, and maybe I'll have a graph of all the enemies I'm talking about. Now some of these weapons do punch above their weight, and that would be something like a charger or even a bile titan that they can potentially deal with, and technically every weapon can kill each one of those enemies. It just kind of depends how efficiently they do it. So something that could take on a charger's backside really quickly, well, it's going to get a few more points in my book. Now for the tier list breakdown, I have S tier. I'm only going to put a few weapons in S tier. Not everything can be S tier, so there will probably be 2 to 3 weapons that I put up there, and admittedly probably going to put a weapon up there that is, I would more consider A tier, but it's just such a favorite of mine and it really gels with like how I like to play the game, so I'll put it up there. But I'll also put out ones that I think just deserve to be up there, even though it maybe is not my favorite playstyle. And for A tier, these are just completely viable, effective weapons. B tier, kind of still viable, but maybe lack or struggle just a little bit. C tier weapons, I think they're going to need help. They're probably weapons that I don't like at all, and I think they're bad. And then yeah, there's a dog shit weapon still, you know, even with the balance patch, all, you know, with all the weapons essentially being lifted up, well, that means not everything can be great, which means some weapons gotta drop a little bit. So we're gonna break down the ARs first, then we're gonna move to the Marksman Rifles, SMGs, shotguns, the explosive weapons, and then the energy weapons, and then our last special weapon. But before we get into the video, if you like Helldivers 2 content, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. We are a small Helldivers 2 channel, and yeah, we're just chugging along. So without further ado, let's get into the video. And did I open the video with the Matrix and then reference and then have a Die Hard reference as well? Sure did. That's the type of things we do here. All right, let's get into the video. I'm gonna situate myself over here on the side of the screen. Hopefully don't get in the way too much. And in the background, I'm gonna be throwing up some footage with some of these weapons that I'm playing with, but I'm not gonna have footage of all the weapons because that would be a lot of files and that's a pain in the ass. So let's get right into the video. Let's start off with the base AR Liberator. This thing I had before. I'll put up my my previous tier list before the patch as well, so you can kind of see the comparison of maybe how some of these weapons changed and maybe how some of them kind of changed, you know, stayed the same. So the AR Liberator, I think this thing deserves to be in B tier. Even though the damage was bumped, this is just a reliable weapon. Now where it sits in B tier does matter as far as left or right. Left is going to be more favorable. I would actually consider the AR, you're going to see later, it's probably going to stay in the upper tier, mid tier of B tier because I just think it's a solid gun. It is the first gun you get, so maybe you want to take that into consideration of why it shouldn't go any higher because again, it's the first gun, everybody's got this gun. And for some reason, they keep buffing this gun. gun, and they just keep making it better and better. But I think functionality wise, I don't see how this thing can go really any higher than B tier. I think this is probably where it should always kind of sit in the meta. And the only thing that I think they could do to this gun right now is maybe bump that magazine size up to 50. I'm a fan of the Halo Combat Evolved when that assault rifle had 60 rounds in it, so I think our ARs could probably use the same treatment. But solid B tier, really good pick. I like bringing this one a lot. And next up is the AR carbine. Now I had this thing ranked below a little bit lower because it just wasn't performing very well. The recoil was really crazy, the damage was so it had a lot of things working against it. Now they did tweak it a little bit, does a little more damage, and this thing does feel better. I'm gonna move this up also to B tier, but it's gonna be on the lower end by the end of this list, I feel like. But still a lot better than it was before. This is actually a weapon I would consider using now, as before I was just gonna leave it. And now we move on to the Tenderizer. Now the Tenderizer is a weapon I said felt worse than the base AR because of that magazine size. They did buff that magazine size, only by 5. I don't know whose dick I gotta suck at Arrowhead to get this thing up to 40 rounds in the mag, but point me to them and I'll get it done for us, boys. But no, I won't. But this thing did get 5 more bullets in the magazine. Now I think it does kind of surpass the base AR. It feels a lot better. Now if I can just get it to move around. I do think it feels better than the base AR. This is definitely a weapon that benefits from tapping the trigger, or maybe trying in burst fire or semi-automatic, or if you have the trigger discipline for it. But you're gonna get a lot more bang for your buck with this weapon if you don't just lay on the trigger with it, because again, 35 rounds, still not that great. But I do think now it's in a better spot, and bump it up to 40 rounds in that magazine, I could easily put this in A tier. Next up, the AR concussive. Oh boy, man, did I shit on this one last tier list, and rightfully so. This gun felt horrible. It was not performing. They gave it a drum mag now. And I had people in my comments last time I made a tier list where they were talking this gun up like like it was one of the best things. It had all this utility, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm sorry. I stand by the fact that this thing was dog shit before the patch. And now, it hurts to kind of do this, but it goes from dog shit to, now I'm putting it in B tier. This thing it feels a lot better. It actually feels like it does damage, does great crowd control. The only issue with this weapon is that rate of fire does feel bad, especially against the bugs. When you want to be, for an AR, you really want to be able to have that quicker fire rate. And really, that's the only area I think this thing is really lacking in. Now, I probably would put it above the carbine, but I wouldn't put it above the base Liberator. I like the base Liberator still a little bit better than this, but these two are pretty much neck and neck. You could flip flop these two, and I think that'd be fine. Now, better than the Tenderizer? No. I still think the Tenderizer is better than this thing, but this is a big leap. This thing jumped 2 tiers in my book, so if you want to make a case for this thing being an A tier for you, I can appreciate that, because the stagger on this weapon, and we'll talk more about the stagger, I guess, when we get to, or we'll talk about it now. So I am going to rate stagger pretty high, because in the higher tiers, stagger does keep that chaff off you, and that is a really valuable asset. That's why a lot of the shotguns are going to get, they're going to sit higher than the AR, because they do have that stagger force. They'll stop things in the air. Now, Liberator and the Tenderizer, these will stop hunters in the air when they're jumping at you. And obviously so will these two. But that is something I rate highly with this list, is their stagger potential. But the concussive, it's making it a long way. If you really wanted to put it in A tier, I could buy that now, as before I could not. But so I'm putting it in B tier now. I have used this thing a lot, and it feels better. But yeah, the rate of fire, I'm not sold on it yet. Let's talk about another gun that maybe deserves some more love still, and that's the Liberator Penetrator. This thing goes back into C tier. It stays in C tier. Now, this is why I don't make videos on things that, say, the CEO or the staff say about weapons, is because they made a comment on the Penetrator saying like, "Ooh, I like it now. It's a lot better." And then people were, saying things like it was going to be great and stuff. And then we got the patch notes, and its damage got bumped up a little bit. This thing still sucks. I'm sorry, this thing's very, very much still underperforming. I think they missed the mark with it, and hopefully they keep working at it, because this is a gun that I love the design. I love the idea of the Penetrator, but it's not where it needs to be, especially against the bugs. Maybe they just want this to be more of a bot weapon, but right now against the Terminids, nope, not feeling it for me right now. So it's staying in C tier for me. And now we can move on to the Adjudicator. Now the Adjudicator, oof. This might be, I feel like this is tied with the Tenderizer. Now, the Adjudicator here, it does have meteor armor penetration, so it does get a little more points for that because of, those biospheres. And, if you do get enough Hive Guard, they are annoying to deal with, but you can always run away from them. But the Adjudicator, yeah, it hits hard. 30 rounds in the magazine isn't great. I would like it to be bumped up a little bit more, but I know they have to do a balancing game between, you know, these light penetration weapons versus the medium ones. You can't really have as many rounds in the magazine for the medium ones, or else it's going to feel like, why would you use a light armor penetration? But where it sits right now, I think you could flip-flop these two and it'd be fine. I could even also put this in A tier if I was really feeling it. But I'm gonna keep it down in B tier because I'm just thinking, out of these two, which would I rather pick? Which would I have more fun with? And I still just have more fun with the Tenderizer. Value wise, I do see why you would want to put it maybe above the base Liberator, but I feel like it sits there comfortably. Again, I can flip-flop these two. Overall, I am a fan of the more conventional weapons, and I'm a big fan of the ARs, so I'm maybe giving them a few more brownie points than some other people would do, but this is kind of where I think the ARs kind of sit. Nothing's really in A tier, because I just don't think they have the stopping power or the stagger needed to take on like a horde or, you know, a bug breach or something like that. And they do struggle against, you have to basically almost mag dump into, say, a alpha commander's head to deal with these things. And then shriekers, they're annoying sometimes if you have really good aim. I play on controller, by the way, so my aim's kind of dog shit anyways, or, you know, I have the controller effect. But trade-off is, I don't know if you guys have played with the PS5 controller, but man, that haptic feedback is next level. It feels really good. It basically is a big selling point for having a PS5 controller just in general. Anyways, aside from that, I got off on a tangent there. This is kind of where I'm going to put these, and yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about this. Now we can move into the Marksman Rifles. Okay, now we can move on to the Marksman Rifles. Now the Diligence, the base Diligence, this obviously doesn't have that medium armor penetration, but it does have more rounds in the magazine. I think it also fires a little bit faster. I had this in C tier before, and struggling with this one because I'm thinking that just the counter snipers in general, they don't gel with me for the bugs. I don't have a good time, you know, using them against the Terminids, but I do see their effectiveness. I do see what their potential is, but just on the higher tiers, something just doesn't. They just don't feel as punchy as I want them to. But do I think the base Diligence belongs in C tier? That's the question, and I just don't know. I'm wrestling with this for a bit. Let me think a little bit. You know, I don't think it sits in C tier because I'm looking at the Penetrator there, and I would much rather take the Diligence over the Penetrator. I am going to put this in B tier, the base one, because I do think it does perform well. It feels pretty good if you can get your shots off. Maybe this is just because I play on controller most of the time. I do have this on PC now, by the way. But yeah, I'm gonna stick it in B tier. Probably gonna be low B tier. I understand its value, and I'll probably put the counter sniper. I mentioned them both as counter snipers. They're Marksman Rifles. This is the counter sniper Diligence, and I will probably put this right alongside it, maybe a little bit above it, because if we're talking about the higher tiers here, there's a good chance you're gonna be running up against those bile spewers in mass numbers. The only thing these two kind of struggle with, I think, is just their punchy feel, how strong, how powerful they feel. I don't feel like they're doing it for me at the moment. I could maybe see the counter sniper, or I guess either one, depending on how you're playing with these. I could see them being a little bit higher, but I just think there's too many things that you come up against with the counter sniper that they're not as effective as I would want them to be, especially against, you know, a horde or a bug breach. I mean, and yeah, I'm gonna keep them in B tier. Keep them in B tier. And moving on to the SMGs. Now, I am happy to report that the Knight, the pay to win weapon that you get from the Deluxe Super Citizen Pack for Helldivers 2, this thing is performing a lot better. It feels really good, especially if you have a little bit of trigger discipline. Its rate of fire is crazy fast, but if you can control that and have more burst fire, this thing feels really good. I'm actually going to slip this in above the carbine because this is one-handed, so it does get that run and gun value, and I do value that pretty highly against the bugs because of hunters. But this thing is feeling great. It does a lot more. It feels like it does a lot more damage. I know it got a damage bump, but it feels really good to use. If you haven't used this in a while, I would bump this out, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So this is moving up a tier. And then next up we have the base SMG Defender. I love this SMG Defender. This is essentially still how I feel like the assault rifles should be performing. It's one-handed, you can run and gun with it, very solid gun. I would put this above the Tenderizer. I like using this more than the Tenderizer and all these other guns in general. The SMG is one of my favorites. This is maybe just a huge bias of mine that I put the SMG this high. So yes, this is definitely where it goes. I love the magazine. I love the rate of fire feels really good on it. Yes, just a very solid pick. Yeah. Defender. Oof, love you, baby. Okay, now let's get into my other love, the Pummeler. This is a little bit, you know, a little bit less damage, a little bit slower fire rate, but it has that stagger of effect. I'm going to put this in A tier because the way I play, essentially. I'm usually running with this or in a railgun, and those two pair excellently together. And I just love what the pummeler can do, and I think it punches above its weight a little bit because of how it handles, say, stalkers. It will stop them in their track, and you can just take them out. Now, you do have to mag dump on a brood commander's face, or I guess alpha commander, to kill him with this thing, but it's a little bit more of a crowd control. I think it's, say, better than, so like you would look at this and then you'd say, well, why are you putting the concussive AR, you know, in the lower tier, but you're putting this in A tier? Well, this thing can run a gun. It's got a faster fire rate. I feel like this gun just feels better overall. And the design, oof, I think this thing looks so good. This is definitely my bias pick here. So if you don't agree with this and you put this in B tier, I understand, but this is my list, so I'm putting it in A tier. That's where I love that. I love the pummeler so much. Moving on to the shotguns. Now, this is where I should probably move myself a little bit because now I'm blocking the thing. So I'm hanging out down here now. But shotguns. Now, this is where the factor of stagger force comes into effect, because I think that's what really shotguns thrive off of, except for, you know, we got the semi-automatic shotguns. We'll talk about those when we get to them. But starting off with the base Punisher, very solid gun. This is like what the second gun you get very early on. You get this gun in the regular base war bond. This is just, it does a lot of damage. It's got that stopping power. It'll push back enemies. It's very solid, very good. This definitely goes in the A tier above the pummeler. This is a very solid pick. I like this shotgun a lot. The cookout. This is from the Freedom's Flames War Bond. This thing is basically the same thing except for with a fire effect, which fire I do rate highly in, you know, against the bugs especially. I feel like the fire damage is very useful against the bugs, just how they play. So it does go above the base Punisher. And these probably the shotguns are mostly kind of going to stay the same because they didn't get a lot of tweaking. Now, these two did. The Spray and Pray and the Breaker. These are the two shotguns that got touched. And whew, they definitely feel better. So I had the Spray and Pray definitely in the lower, or the lower B tier. I'm going to stick it up a little bit higher. This thing feels really good for spraying down Shriekers, taking out Hunter Packs. Obviously, they take out Warriors really easily. The only thing that kind of sucks about this thing is it doesn't have stagger power. It doesn't stagger very well against things that you want it to stagger, like those alpha commanders. But I think its chaff clear potential, it can't be denied. It can't be ignored. It does a little bit more damage. It doesn't feel like you're just shooting, you know, little BBs at the bugs anymore. It feels better. It feels solid. I'm just judging where do I want to put this? I definitely want to put it somewhere in this area, somewhere in the mid B tier. Before I think I had it in low B tier, so it's kind of creeping up a bit. I think I want to put it above the base Liberator, just because it's of its potential and how useful it can be against a bug breach, and it does feel really good just to lay on the trigger with this thing. I think you get a lot of value out of it. And then the Breaker shotgun. Now this thing, it shoots a little bit slower. Magazine size not a big, but you get more punchy power. The only problem is that punchy power stagger is not enough, and it feels bad. And for what I want an automatic shotgun to do, or a semi-automatic shotgun to do, okay. So if I could layer these on top of each other, I would. I think these two are essentially in the same boat. I think they're interchangeable. You could swap them back and forth. This is where I think they sit. They sit somewhere in the middle of B tier. It's kind of a shame because when I saw the Breaker, the buff it got to its magazine size, I thought this was going to be an easy A tier pick. But using it, just not having that stagger force, it doesn't feel as good as you want it to. I'm not going to deny that it's still really good. I just want it to be better. And unfortunately, I had this in, I think, somewhere in the middle of B tier before. And I think it kind of just stays in the same place. Maybe moved up. I think it moved it up a little bit. I think I moved it above the base AR. This is where I think it belongs for me. It's just, yeah, I want it to be better. That's the main thing about the Breaker. Now, moving on to the Breaker Incendiary. Man. I had this in upper B tier. This was the top of the B tier weapon for me, and it didn't get touched, and I kind of feel the same way about it. The fire is really nice, but that magazine size and the ammo economy with it, not great. I feel like with this gun, with these Breaker shotguns, or with the semi-automatic shotguns, the ammo economy is really important, and this one is just, the 4 magazines is not enough. You're gonna run out of ammo so much. And I know ammo is not necessarily a problem if you with the right play style, but I can't put it in A tier. I don't think it's there. That's not true. This is tough. This is tough because it's really good. It really depends on the seed of enemies you get. Because if you get a bunch of shriekers or hunters and stuff, this gun's really good. It feels really good against them. But if you get something, I got to put it in low A tier. I'm moving in low A tier. That fire damage does really help it out, especially against bile spewers. So I talked myself into putting this in A tier, and I would definitely pick this over the pummeler. It's just, again, that I'm getting stuck up on the fact that with the 4 magazines, that really bugs me about this weapon, and I think they'll eventually change it. I'm gonna keep it in A tier, moving it up a bit, so a man can change, And now we can move on to the last shotgun, and that's the Slugger, baby. Oh. This was an S tier pick for me before. I'm not gonna lie, nothing's changed. Is this still an S tier pick for me? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This thing can feel the potential of this weapon is amazing. This thing can really slay out for you. This can 2-tap those bile spewer faces. It keeps back alpha commanders so you can pop their heads off. The only thing I think it really struggles with is shriekers because there's they fly in packs and a little annoying. But I'm willing to look past that because I just think the gun feels amazing and I love the design. I love the style of it. This is definitely this is an A tier weapon that I'm putting in S tier because of the way I play and the way I like this weapon and how it feels. Stagger Force got returned to it. It feels great. I love the Slugger shotgun. I think this is always a very solid pick. Yes, I'm looking at the tier list and I'm thinking, out of all these weapons, man, if push comes to shove, I'm taking the Slugger. So now that takes us to the explosive category. We got a few changes up in this list here. So we're gonna start off with the crossbow. This thing was a middle of the pack B tier weapon for me last time, and that was because it's the perfect utility weapon, essentially. This is something that you would pair with a stalwart or a machine gun or something like that. And there's two issues with this weapon, and I think they're still the same issues, is the rate of fire and the magazine size are not great. But that being said, the damage on it is undeniable. Is this the highest damage weapon, I think? Maybe? Yeah, this might be the highest damage weapon at the moment. I'd have to number check, but we don't do that around here right now. This might be the highest damage number. And the fact that it has the radius of the explosions has been expanded. Now, where this weapon could struggle is if you get caught out by a bunch of hunters or a brood commander or an alpha commander, charges you, can be kind of problematic. But then on the flip side, this thing destroys charger backsides, and it also breaks Bile Titan sacks really, really well. So this thing punches above its weight there, and you kind of just gotta, this is definitely one of those weapons where you gotta weigh the pros and cons and kind of where you sit with the crossbow. And for me, well, gonna be pretty obvious. If it's not obvious, I don't know why I said that, but it's going in A tier for me. Where does it go in A tier? I think I would take this above the base shotgun, but I wouldn't take it above the cookout. I think the cookout's a little bit better. Again, these two are kind of flip-floppy, but I do think it's an A tier weapon now. It is really good. Maybe you can even make that case because of how much it punches above its weight. You could put it in S tier. I'm not comfortable with the S tier with it because of, again, the rate of fire and then the magazine size, and then if things getting in close quarters with you, you will end up hurting yourself. But I'm happy to put it in A tier. Ooh, but now that means we can move to the Eruptor. Oh, the Eruptor. I had this in low A tier last time. Has anything really changed about it? Yeah, it got its shrapnel effect back. It got its damage bumped down. So this is basically our high-powered explosive bolt action sniper. And I love that. I love that fantasy, that play style. I would really love a true bolt action sniper. This is, I see with these snipers, or I guess with the sniper archetype, I really want them to feel punchy like the Eruptor. And this is why the Marksman Rifles, I'm not sold on them yet, essentially. That's why, because it just doesn't feel as punchy. The Eruptor here, I'm going to keep it in A tier. This thing does really well against chaff. The only problem with the Eruptor is maybe the consistency now with the shrapnel, but when it gets going, you're going to be racking up kills like crazy. It kind of runs into the same problem with the crossbow, where, close quarters, when things are in your face, you do have to create that distance because this thing will kill you if you shoot it too close, or it has the potential to. But would I take this over the pummeler? Yeah, sorry, pummeler. I would put this above the pummeler. think that this is a change up from last time. But the Eruptor also has still the potential of destroying charger backside still. I think that's it can do really heavy damage if you're in the right positions. If you're on top of your game, yeah, you're gonna get a lot out of this weapon. The Eruptor's still really good. I don't necessarily know why I'm kind of thinking about this one a lot, because not much has changed. It still performs the exact same way. Obviously it stays in A tier for me, but I could see if you want to put it in to lower, or to I guess high B tier, I could see that. But for me, I value that bolt action style, so I'm cool with that. Now, moving on to the Dominator. I had this thing in upper B tier last time, and I think I kind of want to keep it in the same place just because of the rate of fire, its handling. Again, I'm on controller, so it's a little bit, unwieldy sometimes, and it kind of struggles against if you're in the middle of a pack getting hit a few times. Your reticle goes all over the place. It's got a great magazine size though, and it does have medium armor penetration and that explosive effect. This thing, I think this thing does belong in A tier. I think it's either, I think before I had this thing either upper B tier or lower A tier, and now I'm putting it in a lower A tier. What it does, I can't deny how useful this is against the bugs. Maybe it struggles a little bit against a lot of chaff, but those heavier armor ones, it deals with nicely. Shriekers, obviously, maybe it'll struggle a little bit just because its rate of fire, but I think it belongs in lower A tier. I would still rather take the Pummeler. Again, these are just two different play styles, and I do think I'm kind of just looking at the Pummeler and I compare all these lower ones, like what would I rather take? And the Pummeler, again, it's a favorite of mine, and I think it does a great job with light armor enemies and just keeping those under control. And the Jar 5, I think it deals with those heavier targets pretty well. Fuck it. Oh. I gotta put this here because I think it does the same job as the crossbow and the Eruptor. It punches above its weight, but it doesn't have that explosive radius effect, which I think knocks it points. But still, this is A tier. It's a great tier. This is nitpicking at the moment. This really just comes down to your play style. I'm gonna keep the Dominator here, I think. All right, two more categories. Thank you guys for sticking around this long. Let's end this on a high note, and by high note I mean let's talk about the Las sickle, or is this the scythe? This is the scythe. I always get these names messed up. Yeah, it's the scythe. Now this thing did get a damage bump. I don't like this playstyle with this weapon. It is not good. I think with especially in those upper tiers, you need something that either pushes back the enemies, staggers them, or melts them really quickly, or something like that, kills them fast. This thing doesn't do really either. It'll kill, the smaller bugs and like the warriors pretty quick, but everything else, just no, it's not cutting it. I know it does a little bit of a fire effect if you have it on the target for a longer time, but nope, I'm not gelling with the scythe right now. I get that some people really like it, but it's just not for me. I'm keeping the scythe in C tier, unfortunately. Sorry, laser enjoyers. It's just this one's not for me. And I don't see the value in it when I play with it. I would rather use anything else other than this, essentially. Well, that's not true. We haven't talked about the Purifier yet, but we're not there. Now we're gonna move on to the weapon that puts basically all the ARs to shame, and that is the sickle. The sickle is still amazing. This melts bugs. This is what I was talking about before, where I'm not going to judge the sickle on the fact that it doesn't have medium armor penetration, but the light armor penetration that it does have, it just destroys all those lower tier bugs really quickly. And the fact that this thing's almost like a mini stalwart as far as like how long you can hold on the trigger, and you have enough magazines in this thing to run out, to hit that maximum power threshold and just change out the magazine. That's a totally fine playstyle. But then for those more quiet moments, yeah, a little bit of trigger discipline, and this thing's never gonna run out of ammo. So this thing, it's an amazing pick. This is still an A tier weapon. I would rather take the crossbow over it, obviously, but I think this thing sits comfortably in top of A tier, and this will always be at the moment the best kind of AR SMG type weapon. This is basically the best light armor penetration weapon, essentially, just because how quickly it melts targets. Now the cookout sits a little bit above it for me because of that stagger potential, but I honestly, last time I did this tier list, I had this above the cookout. So these two obviously could flip flop. This is, again, up here in the upper echelons of A tier. Really, all these weapons you could, flip flop. It's just the overall tier list and kind of where they sit is more important. But yeah, you could flip flop these around. But I think the sickle here, ooh, still so good, so very, very good. And now we're talking about the Arc Blitzer. Now this thing I had this in A tier as well. It was in in that second place slot last time, I think. This thing is really good. This thing's really, really good. And it builds up stagger now. This thing, so, it's going into S tier, by the way. This is not necessarily my favorite pick, but I just see so much value with this when I use it. They fixed the lightning effect to not get stuck on, you know, things in front of you. The rate of fire obviously got buffed during its first, you know, run in with the balance, and the fact that you can just hold this trigger down and anything in front of you will be staggered, stunned, and held back, and it ignores armor, so it covers everything, all the bugs that we talked about at the beginning of this video. It covers all of them, and it does it really well. Now, it doesn't necessarily punch above its weight in the fact that, you know, we're talking about chargers and, you know, the massive and heavy enemies, but that's okay because everything under it, it completely handles, it manages. You never run out of ammo. You never have to lay off the trigger. You don't have to reload. There's just so much value with the Blitzer, and that's why it sits in A tier. I'm sorry, did I say A tier? I meant S tier. That's why it's very comfortably in S tier. Not my favorite pick, but man, it's just so much value in it. I'm more of a conventional weapon type of guy, but yes, I see the absolute value in the Blitzer. It's an easy S tier pick after, again, the stun build up and how many things this thing just keeps getting done to it that just make it better and better. And moving right along, we've got the plasma shotgun, the plasma Punisher. This thing was an A tier pick before, and it's still in the A tier. And when we're talking about upper tier difficulties, tier 10, tier 9, this thing does a great job of keeping the chaff off you. It's got that explosive damage type as well. Yeah, I think that's where I want to put it. I like the shotgun. Actually, I would probably put it above the regular Punisher too. This thing covers a lot of the enemies, and again, that explosive damage type, really helpful. And it has a lot of value to it. I don't think it's the greatest thing at killing alpha commanders. I think you got to put too many shells or rounds or explosive bullets into it, but it does keep them back, and it does keep them from charging you. So it does have that stagger and stun effect. So maybe you could call it out a stratagem or use your another weapon on with a grenade, something like that. It gives you that freedom. So a lot of value in its stagger effect. A lot of value in the fact that it does explosive damage type and its medium armor penetration. Yes, it's a very solid weapon. Hi, baby. Hello. Hello. I'm not done with the tier list yet. What? My tier list is garbage. Well, nobody asked you. Also, if you like German Shepherds, Lady makes an appearance every now and then too. Hi, baby. Go on. We'll want to walk later. Go. Good girl. And then there were 3. So the Scorcher here, this is another A tier pick. The only issue with this weapon is the ammo economy. If you just rely on this, you're going to burn through a lot of ammo, but it does handle all of the bugs that we mentioned before. And I would stick it somewhere in the upper A tier here. I like, just personal preference, I like using it over the Plasma Purifier, but I understand how good the Plasma Purifier is. But I prefer using the Scorcher. Before, I think I had this in lower A tier. I don't know why. Again, this is the problem with tier lists, is it matters what day of the week it is. Maybe you know, how you slept. You could literally swap a lot of these weapons around, and I'd be completely fine with it. But you know, general area, I think I'm on the mark with a lot of these. But we now got to move to the only dog shit weapon, and that's the Purifier. I had this in C tier, but bringing it into tier 9, tier 10s, this thing struggles a lot. This thing sucks. It does not do enough damage. I know they are going to balance it in the next round of balance, but that balance has not happened yet, and as it stands now, it sucks. It is not good at all. Do not use this weapon. It is dog shit, essentially. I don't think there's enough I don't know what else there is to say about that weapon. It feels bad, doesn't do enough damage, and the fire rate's horrible. The fire rate is horrible for how much it does with its bullets. It's just such a waste. This thing sucks. All right. And moving on to our last weapon, and this is the special category, the only special category. It's the Flamethrower. This thing was a C tier, and that was just an unfortunate timing when Arrowhead didn't know how to balance, essentially, and they nerfed fire, and then brought this thing out, and it sucked, and it was not good. But they have fixed fire. Fire is really good now. This thing punches above its weight, and the fact that it can cook chargers, it does a really good job at melting lower chaff. The things I think it struggles with is maybe alpha commanders. I think they are very tanky, and this thing, maybe you'll get caught on fire with them, but this is a strong A tier pick. I'm just thinking about where I want to put it in A tier at the moment. I think it definitely sits somewhere in the upper A tier. This Flamethrower is really good, and also if you like using flamethrowers, and I do like using flamethrowers every now and then. Is it better than the Plasma Punisher? In my opinion, they're so similar. Again, everything everything from the Plasma Punisher up, I could see swapping around in whatever places. The Cookout sitting this high, I am not actually that comfortable with. It's really good, but would I take it over these other weapons? You know, I'm actually going to move this sucker all the way up because I see the Cookout here. And honestly, I would rather use the crossbow and the Cookout. I think, again, a lot of these everything. Again, circling back here, everything in this Plasma Purifier and up, I could see swapping around places. And obviously Punisher and down, I could see swapping around these places, except for the Pummeler. I think the Pummeler does sit comfortably at the bottom of A tier. My list here, and kind of works similar for the SMGs and everything here. I would say you could swap around a lot. I do think the Count or the Marksman Rifles do sit somewhere in lower B tier in general. In the C tier, I stand by these ones. These weapons need help. They don't feel good. They're not effective. And obviously the worst of the worst is the Purifier. So yeah, this is my tier list here. Feel free to comment below on where you think some of these weapons should land. And again, just remember that, you know, everybody's tier list is essentially flawed, and, you know, what weapons you gel with and your play style, that's, you know, that's not the same as mine, obviously. So take that into consideration when you critique and talk with each other. But yeah, these are fun videos to do just because, you know, we get to talk about a game we like, and it's a good time. So eventually, you know, I got to talk about the stratagem weapons and then the airstrikes and the orbitals and sentries. I'll eventually do tier list on those because, again, they are fun. They open up discussion about the game, and obviously Helldivers 2, it's got some, it's gonna have some long legs, especially now that the bounce team kind of gets what the community wants. Now, nothing's ever going to be perfect, but that's okay. Anyways, yep, that's the video. Next up, next week, probably be a build video. It will be a build video, actually. So I will see you then, guys. And so have a good one. Peace, and take care.